ads are all over the airwaves, making claims and promises about everything from the budget to the border. Tonight, ABC15 investigator Lauren Gilger fact-checks Republican candidate Christine Jones's recent ad in her bid for governor.
Illegal immigration costs Arizona taxpayers $2.8 billion every single year. When I'm governor, that will change.
Opposing voices say the immigration population brings in more than that in revenue. A University of Arizona study backs that argument. We asked the Jones campaign how they came up with this number. They told us it comes from FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Critics are quick to point out the group is anything but unbiased and is actually listed as a hate group with the Southern Poverty Law Center.
I'll deploy 1,200 troops to the border.
Jones means National Guardsmen. State governors have no authority over regular U.S. military troops. The governor can activate members of the National Guard, but if she wants to deploy them full-time for defense, she needs approval from the federal government, according to U.S. regulations. Her campaign told us the deployment will cost $120 million, which Arizona will pay initially, but then she'll demand to be reimbursed by the federal government.
Use technology to monitor who's coming and going.
Surveillance is one of the only things the National Guard could do on the border. The National Guard rep told us in the past they've served mainly in administrative and surveillance roles, freeing up Border Patrol agents to take care of apprehensions and enforcement.
Finish the fence.
Part of the reason the fence is not complete is because the border includes tribal land. She would have no authority to build on that land.
And send Obama the bill.
Jones is welcome to try and send President Obama a bill, but it didn't work in the past. Governor Brewer countersued the U.S. government for reimbursement of illegal immigration costs under SB 1070, but that case got thrown out of court.
Laws will be enforced, no priority, no amnesty, and no more excuses.
Bottom line is, immigration laws are federal, not state. So whoever's elected governor, they'll have no authority over federal immigration laws. Christine Jones has written up her entire immigration plan. We put a link on our website, abc15.com/investigators. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
How to protect Arizona's border against illegal immigration. The candidates are talking tough, promising new border fences, satellites, even using National Guard troops. ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger looks at the big question: who's going to pay for it?
As governor, I'll fight back with every resource at my command. Fencing, satellites, guardsmen, more police and prosecutors. We'll get this done.
When I'm governor, I'll deploy 1,200 troops to the border.
From 1,200 to 3,000 troops. Arizona's hopefuls to be the next to sit in the governor's office are making some serious promises about how they'll secure the border. On the top of the list, sending National Guard troops by the thousands.
I stopped illegal immigration before. As governor, I'll do it again. This time for good.
But when we took a closer look at the issue, we found the reality is it isn't so simple. Governor Brewer's office told us the numbers just don't add up. There's about $4 million in our state's emergency funds. 1,000 troops would deplete that fund in about 2 weeks. Only about a quarter of the land along the border in Arizona is state land. Most of it is federal or tribal. That means if the state sent troops to the border, they wouldn't be able to apprehend or arrest anyone under federal immigration law.
Governor Brewer has considered sending National Guard troops to the border before. Her office decided it was not an effective use of taxpayer money. Her rep did tell me the governor would support the idea if the federal government wanted to foot the bill. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
Attack ads seem to be everywhere, especially in the Republican primary for Arizona governor. The ads claim Doug Ducey was a failed businessman. Christine Jones lied about her military history. And Scott Smith supports Obamacare, but are they right? And who is behind them? ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger has been fact-checking the ads, and tonight she takes a closer look at an ad aimed at Scott Smith.
What do Scott Smith and Obama have in common?
It never takes long in a political season for the attack ads to start, regardless of the party, regardless of the race. This one takes on gubernatorial hopeful Scott Smith, highlighting his support of the Medicaid expansion in Arizona.
They both support more government control over your health care.
Smith does support the Medicaid expansion in Arizona, just like Governor Jan Brewer, who recently endorsed him.
Experts knew most Arizonans who could be forced into access through Obamacare Obamacare's Medicaid expansion already had private insurance.
It was a controversial decision, but Brewer managed to push through the legislation, extending Medicaid to about 300,000 more low-income Arizonans.
Until their plans were taken away by Obamacare, that is.
The expansion was meant to provide health insurance to millions of poor people who didn't have insurance or had too little insurance. It's true that some people's private insurance plans were canceled because they needed to increase coverage to meet the new requirements.
Instead of fighting for us so we could keep our plans and get government out of the way, Smith supported Obamacare's Medicaid expansion.
The Smith campaign calls this a false equivalency. Supporting the Medicaid expansion, they say, does not mean Smith supported Obamacare or the individual mandate for health care.
That's not the leadership we need.
But here's the big question. Who paid for this ad? It's right here at the end, the 60 Plus Association. Now, we did some digging and found this national group has already spent a reported $441,000 attacking Smith this campaign cycle. That's according to records filed with the Arizona Secretary of State's office. But the group, which advocates for senior citizens' issues yet stands opposed to the AARP, has a history of spending big bucks on politics. In 2010, they reported $7.2 million in election spending to the IRS. That's according to ProPublica. The 60 Plus Association has a tax-exempt status and claims they're nonpartisan. And they don't have to reveal the identities of their donors like political campaigns do. Now, they answered all of the questions I asked them, and you can see all of that on our website at abc15.com/investigators. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
Well, 60 Plus isn't the only dark money group out there. We did some last-minute checking for you, and as of tonight, 7 different dark money groups have spent just under $4 million trying to impact the outcome of the Arizona primary.
Just a few days away, and the attack ads are in full swing. 2 Republicans facing off in the race for the Attorney General's office, the embattled incumbent Tom Horn and challenger Mark Brnovich. In the latest ad, Horn blasts his opponent, but do the claims add up? ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger has the fact check.
Arizona's facing an illegal immigration crisis.
In the primary race for the Attorney General's office, Tom Horn is facing one challenger for the primary ticket, longtime prosecutor Mark Brnovich.
Yet Mark Brnovich supported a leader of the Open Borders movement, an advocate of driver's licenses to illegals, and taxpayer-funded tuition for illegals.
That leader was Pinal County Supervisor Pete Rios, a Democrat. Brnovich donated $120 to the Rios campaign a decade ago. Back when he was a state senator, Rios introduced legislation to allow undocumented immigrants to get driver's licenses. And he supported the DREAM Act, allowing in-state tuition for undocumented students who were brought to the U.S. at a young age. We should also mention Tom Horn was registered as a Democrat earlier in his life. His campaign pointed out so was President Reagan.
That's Obama's position.
But Brnovich told me the claims in the ad are ludicrous. He supported Rios because he was willing to work with Republicans. And he said he's the only candidate in the race who's spoken out in support of the governor's ban on driver's licenses for illegal immigrants. Here's a little history about Tom Horn's position on illegal immigration. As Attorney General, Horn fought for SB 1070 all the way to the Supreme Court with Governor Jan Brewer. Now she is supporting his opponent, who used to serve in her cabinet as the director of the Department of Gaming.
Tom Horn standing up to the Obama agenda and demanding we defend our borders.
Recently, Horn sent a cease and desist letter to the federal government, demanding they stop sending illegal immigrants to Arizona or he would sue.
Thanks to Horn, proof of citizenship is required when registering to vote.
This is true. Horn argued in front of a federal judge to allow states to require proof of citizenship to vote. He won.
Endorsed by Sheriff Arpaio.
Oh, politics. Here's the thing. A few years back, Arpaio was far from endorsing Tom Horn.
Tom Horn favors amnesty for illegal immigrants, which would cost taxpayers billions.
It seems Arpaio's tune has changed. That was an ad from the election 4 years ago, paid for by Arpaio's campaign for sheriff. In fact, Horn sued to try and stop the ad and lost.
Tom Horn, fighting for us.
Right now, Horn is up against multiple investigations into alleged campaigning from his taxpayer-funded state office. His rep says they are not affecting his campaign. And last year, the FBI reported that Horn, who is married, was having an affair with an employee when he accidentally hit a parked car and didn't leave a note.
So far, Horn's campaign has raised about 3 times as much as Brnovich's, but they trade off on big endorsements. Brnovich has the support of Governor Jan Brewer and former Senator John Kyle, while Horn has Arpaio and several law enforcement associations in his corner. You can see all the questions I asked both campaigns and their answers on our website, abc15.com/investigators. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
Who do you want on the Corporation Commission?
The Corporation Commission? I'm guessing that's not a question many of you have thought of before.
Ethically challenged Vernon Parker?
But this primary season, there are 2 open seats on the Corporation Commission taking center stage. It's the government agency that regulates power and water utilities in our state, mainly APS. 5 elected commissioners hear rate cases and decide how much you pay for utilities.
The SBA said Vernon Parker's company submitted false information.
In this race, a dark money group called Save Our Future Now has spent more than $830,000 fighting against Vernon Parker.
False information.
In 2008, the Small Business Association investigated Parker. They claimed he applied for a loan while he was still a federal employee, which is against the rules. He appealed and lost, but the SBA did dismiss several other charges against him. Parker adamantly denies any wrongdoing here. He told ABC 15 he fought back against the federal investigation so it wouldn't happen to anyone else.
Vernon Parker, an ethically challenged politician Arizona can't trust.
Parker is considered pro-solar. He's received more than $140,000 in positive campaigning from a nonprofit called Tusk, or Tell Utilities Solar Won't Be Killed, though he says he's asked them to stay out of the race.
Support real conservatives like Doug Little and Tom Faries.
Save Our Future Now has spent more than $425,000 combined supporting Little and Faries. And because of their nonprofit status, they're not required to report where their money came from.
They'll fight to keep our power bills low.
But there's a lot of speculation the money comes from APS. Parker told us they're trying to handpick the commissioners who will ultimately regulate them.
You have 2 votes, so support the conservatives.
APS wouldn't tell us whether or not they contributed to Save Our Future Now, but they did defend their right to get involved in the election and blamed Tusk and other out-of-state groups for, quote, injecting politics into the regulatory arena.
That's Little and Faries.
Both Little and Faries said they have no idea why this group is supporting their campaigns, and they don't know who is funding them.
Conservatives for Corporation Commission.
The Little and Faries campaigns also pointed out that there's a lot of money attacking them. But according to the Secretary of State, there's been more than 3 times as much money spent against Parker. You can read more from everyone involved on our website, abc15.com/investigators. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
For the governor's office in full swing, and in one corner of the ring, Republican Doug Ducey, the other, Democrat Fred Duval.
Yeah, barely. After the primary polls even closed, the first attack ads hit the airwaves, and it seems that Ducey's supporters are behind it this time.
ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger has been fact-checking the political ads this election season, and she's got the truth on this one. Lauren?
The latest poll shows Duval and Ducey are in a dead heat. Maybe that's why Republicans wasted no time going after Duval. Ducey was beat up quite a bit in the primary by other Republicans, and Duval ran unopposed for the Democratic nomination. So what's the first jab Republicans took at their Democratic rival in the general election? Take a look.
The first attack ad in the general election for the governor's office is all over the airwaves. The target, Democratic candidate Fred Duval. The subject, Duval's service on the Arizona Board of Regents, which sets tuition and fees for our state's 3 universities.
It keeps parents awake at night, worrying about the high cost of college tuition.
College tuition is certainly high. In fact, it's double what it was before the Great Recession.
And it gets more expensive every year. It's just not fair.
But at the same time, the Arizona legislature, which is and was majority Republican, cut per-student funding for public higher education in half. They were the deepest cuts in the country.
But lobbyist Fred Duval voted to increase college tuition on the Board of Regents.
That's why it's debatable that the cost of college went up only because of the Arizona Board of Regents or Fred Duval's role on it.
Under Duval, tuition and fees rose 99%, doubling the price of college.
It's true that every year Duval was on the board, he voted for tuition increases. But he says it was either that or basically closing the universities altogether.
Costing Arizona students nearly $5,000 more a year.
According to a report by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, when you cut state funding by that much, the universities have to cut services or raise tuition to cover the gap. In Arizona, they had to do both. It's also worth noting when Duval became president of the board, he advocated for a $0 tuition increase, and ASU and U of A froze tuition that year.
Lobbyist Fred Duval made middle-class families pay more.
Here's where a former colleague of Duval's, a Republican in fact, comes into play. Almost as soon as the ad was out, Ann Mariucci released a statement defending Duval. She called the ad, quote, highly inaccurate, and said the tuition increases were forced by the legislature's deep cuts.
Come on, Fred. That's just not fair.
This ad was paid for by the Republican Governors Association. They're doing business in Arizona as a PAC called RGA Arizona. And you can see every donor who's helped give them the more than $1 million in their war chest on the Secretary of State's website. One thing you might notice, none of those donors are from Arizona. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
Getting dirty in the race for Arizona's District 1 congressional seat. Democratic incumbent Ann Kirkpatrick facing off against former Republican state legislator Andy Tobin. And we're sure seeing the attack ads for both of them.
Yeah, tonight ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger fact checks one of the ads that set off a firestorm when the National Republican Campaign Committee released it last week. And it's all because of women's legs.
When Ann Kirkpatrick comes back from Washington, she carries a lot of baggage.
A congresswoman depicted as a headless pair of legs in heels and a skirt.
President Obama's baggage.
Called a sexist attack, the depiction didn't sit well with some. The NRCC didn't answer our question about the ad's portrayal of the congresswoman, but Kirkpatrick's response was cheeky. She tweeted, short skirt and high heels, nope, not me. TV attack ad consultants need some rural AZ 101, and this picture of her in jeans and cowboy boots. So what about the claims made in the ad? The NRCC told ABC 15 Kirkpatrick has consistently supported policies that increase spending and raise our nation's debt.
Like her 3 votes to raise the debt limit.
This is true. Kirkpatrick voted in 2010, 2013, and 2014 to raise the debt limit. This critique harkens back to the 3-year-long battle to either raise the debt limit or allow the U.S. government to default on its loans and potentially fall over the so-called fiscal cliff. Kirkpatrick, along with most Democrats in the House, voted to raise the debt limit. In the end, so did key Republican leadership.
I'm not going to second-guess the president.
We did a little digging and found the 2011 interview these bites came from, an AM talk radio show called Democratic Perspective from the Verde Valley Independent Democrats.
Kirkpatrick refuses to fix Obamacare.
I completely support what the president did with the Affordable Care Act.
Listen to the rest of the quote from that interview.
Well, I completely support what the president did with the Affordable Care Act.
Yes, sir.
There are some other things that, I see a little differently.
And you see, she's not a fan of everything the president's done. Kirkpatrick admits her support of Obamacare has won her fans and detractors. The Kirkpatrick campaign told ABC 15 she supported bipartisan fixes to the ACA and doesn't think it's a perfect law. But the NRCC is quick to point out it took her 6 weeks to criticize the rollout of Obamacare.
She's not independent. She just votes the party line.
I'm not going to second-guess the president.
The NRCC pulled this stat from the Sunlight Foundation's Open Congress. It's a nonpartisan organization dedicated to transparency in government. It's true, in her 2 terms, she's voted with her party 89% of the time, according to the site. But last year, she was also ranked one of the most likely Democrats to vote against her party by the National Journal. They found she voted against her party more than twice as many times as most, which makes sense considering she represents a swing district often split between Democrats and Republicans.
And Kirkpatrick, too much baggage.
Kirkpatrick's opponent, Andy Tobin, just came out of a tough primary, but Republicans still see the seat as up for grabs. And the first poll out in the race, done by a GOP pollster, shows Tobin ahead. Next week, we'll fact-check the ad on the other side of the race against him. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
Month left before the general election. All the marbles are on the table in the 1st District congressional race.
That's right. Republican challenger Andy Tobin is facing off against incumbent Ann Kirkpatrick, and his first TV ad of the campaign has Democrats crying foul. So ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger takes a look in tonight's Fact Check report.
The way Washington piles up debt is outrageous.
Andy Tobin has been a fixture in the Arizona House of Representatives since 2006.
I'm Andy Tobin. It's time to eliminate the wasteful spending.
Now, in his bid to take Democrat Ann Kirkpatrick's congressional seat, he's resting his campaign on his House record.
Mr. Speaker of the House, I cut spending by 25%.
Now it's true, the legislature cut about 25% of its funding from 2007 to 2010. But I talked with an expert at ASU's Morrison Institute who said the spending that was cut wasn't necessarily wasteful. This was smack dab in the middle of the Great Recession, and the legislature cut millions from everything, especially education and the Department of Economic Security.
But notice the citation here, fiscal year 2007 to 2010 budget. As the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee was quick to point out, Tobin wasn't elected Speaker until after this, in 2011.
When we asked, his campaign brushed it off, saying Tobin served in leadership nearly his entire time in the legislature. And they're right. Before he was elected Speaker, Tobin served as Majority Whip and Majority Leader.
Eliminated sweetheart pensions for politicians.
This is true. Tobin led the effort to reform the generous pension plan for elected officials and judges back in 2013 and replaced it with a 401k-like system, but not in a way that would affect any of them, including Tobin, because the new plan only applied to those elected in the future.
Passed the biggest tax cuts in state history.
Tobin was one of a few dozen legislators who sponsored a massive jobs bill in 2011. But it was the brainchild of Governor Jan Brewer, an attempt to jumpstart the state's economy after the recession. The controversial bill passed during a special session ordered by the governor and did, in fact, represent $538 million in tax cuts. One note of interest here, as far as Tobin's ad goes, take a look at the article they cite when talking about the tax cuts. Democrats point out it wasn't really an article, but actually a press release written by Daniel Scarpinato, who now works for the National Republican Congressional Committee.
Tobin's campaign has told us they cited that on purpose, and that Tobin's support of that jobs bill shows the clear contrast in this race. His opponent, Ann Kirkpatrick, has said cutting taxes isn't the only way to stimulate job growth. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
When I was 6 years old, my dad was killed in the line of duty.
Chris Pierce is a Phoenix firefighter. His father, firefighter Ricky Pierce, was killed in 1984 trying to rescue a petroleum worker trapped in a chemical tank.
Our family needed his firefighter death benefits to survive.
But this isn't really an ad about the Pierce family. This is the United Phoenix Firefighters Union and the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association's best attempt to defeat Proposition 487, otherwise known as the Phoenix Pension Reform Act.
Now I'm a firefighter, and it gives me great peace of mind to know that if I get hurt on the job, my family will be taken care of.
487 is meant to get rid of the city's underfunded pension system and replace it with a 401k-like system for all future hires.
But even though it says right here in the proposition's language the act is not intended to affect the public safety employees' retirement system, Phoenix firefighters and police officers strongly disagree.
It is misleading and it is just plain false.
In fact, they claim it will do the opposite.
Proposition 487 ends death and disability benefits for police officers and firefighters.
It's hard to say who's right in this debate. Firefighters cite this analysis from the city of Phoenix, which says the initiative could stop the city from being able to pay into the public safety pension plan, which would cut off their death and disability benefits.
No! 47!
The Arizona Free Enterprise Club, the dark money group that wrote and paid for this proposition, says the city is biased and doing everything it can to defeat the initiative.
It's wrong for public safety. It's wrong for our city.
We requested the legal opinion behind the city's analysis of Prop 487. They wouldn't release it to us or to anyone, but they did say the city has no position on the measure and that their analysis is only meant to describe the potential impacts as written.
Please don't abandon our public safety family.
The Arizona Free Enterprise Club thinks there's another big problem with the firefighters' argument. State law wouldn't allow the city to stop paying into their retirement plans in the first place.
There's one thing just about everyone seems to agree on when it comes to Prop 487. It's divisive and will likely result in lawsuits, and those lawsuits will cost taxpayers money. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
With the November election just days away now, the stakes are higher than ever, and in the race for Attorney General, dark money is fueling the fight.
Now the state's largest utility is getting in the game, but one candidate is turning down their donation. ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger will tell you why.
shock, and disgust.
That's how Democratic candidate for Attorney General Felicia Rodolini reacted when she learned the parent company of APS, Pinnacle West Capital, donated $125,000 to campaign against her.
I could not believe that they didn't want to support me and that they would be willing to make blatant lies against me.
Rodolini says she learned of the donation after she met with APS, and they offered her a donation of about $4,500 from their PAC. Now she's turning it down.
I've seen what APS's contributions to the dark money groups have done to attack people, to attack me with false lies. I'm not going to accept that kind of money. They're not part of my campaign.
Her campaign filed a complaint against Pinnacle West, alleging their contribution to the National Republican Attorney General's Association was illegally earmarked for the Arizona branch to fund an attack ad against her.
That's wrong, and we need to do something about that.
Why? Turns out the AG's office reviews and approves any rules the Corporation Commission wants to create. And the Corporation Commission regulates APS, our state's largest power utility.
I think there's some concerns about the solar rules and the repeal of the solar rules and the Attorney General's office role in overseeing that review and repeal process.
APS would only tell us they don't comment on individual contributions, but they support any party's cause that's pro-business and, quote, supportive of a sustainable energy future for Arizona.
The Arizona branch of the Republican Attorney General's Association has spent an astonishing $2.4 million attacking Rodolini. They've also spent about $40,000 supporting her opponent, Republican Mark Brnovich. We reached out to the Brnovich campaign, but they declined to comment on this story since they are not a subject of the complaint. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
Dark money and outside money, they have become a force in this election, funding attack ads and also dominating the debate.
ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger has been tracking all of these and tallied up some of the biggest spenders this election. Lauren, who was hit hardest here?
That would be Democratic candidate for governor Fred Duvall. Outside groups like the Republican Governors Association and conservative group American Encore spent an astounding $6.4 million attacking him since the primary ended. In comparison, only about $900,000 has been spent against Republican Doug Ducey in that time. Dark money comes from groups who don't have to disclose their donors by law. In the Attorney General's race, Democrat Felicia Rodolini has been hammered by the Republican Attorneys General Association to the tune of $2.9 million. And on the other side, a group with ties to the Democratic Attorneys General Association has spent more than $1 million against her Republican opponent, Mark Brnovich. In all, we're talking about almost $20 million spent attacking candidates in Arizona this election. So has it affected your vote? Use the hashtag AZVotes and let us know on Facebook or Twitter. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
I pledge my best efforts as the governor of this great state.
And we have a new set of lawmakers ready to take charge in Arizona, but with millions spent on attack ads by outside and often unnamed donors, this election really left a lot of Arizonans with a pretty bad taste in their mouths.
Yeah, ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger has been tracking the dark and outside money pouring into this election, and she's got the answer to the big question. Did it actually work?
I have called Doug Ducey to congratulate him and wish him well. I would like to call and congratulate the other big winners of tonight's race, but frankly, a lot of the big winners are undisclosed, unknown, and out of state.
Lobbyist Fred Duvall voted to increase college tuition on the Board of Regents.
Undisclosed and out of state. That's where almost $20 million in attack ads came from in this election in Arizona. Not to mention another $24 million in outside money in the congressional races. And Democratic nominee for governor Fred Duvall made sure to hammer that home when he conceded the race to Doug Ducey on election night.
There's been an enormous amount of money spent.
There's this sense in Arizona that we did get inundated this time.
Rodolini's liberal agenda will increase illegal immigration.
They've dominated the airwaves, ads funded by outside and dark money groups trying to affect your vote.
So it's essentially undisclosed people giving unlimited amounts of money, and this time around in Arizona it played an overwhelming role in the outcome of elections.
Don Bivens chaired the Democratic Party in Arizona for years before a Supreme Court decision called Citizens United changed everything we knew about donating to campaigns.
Under this new law, one guy with $800,000 can have just as much impact as the 8,000 people with $100.
It's an imbalance Bivens questions, but Republican political analyst Scott Seeley sees it a little differently.
There's no question that although there was a lot of money spent, we still had either people not participating in the process or the people that were participating could have been better informed.
It's true. Voter turnout in Arizona Tuesday was estimated to be at a record low. But Seeley thinks outside and dark money just helps campaigns get out their message.
We need to get more people better informed, and less money and even less outside money does not better inform the voters.
Does it give us a more informed voter, or does it give us a group of people who we don't know who had incredible influence over a race for reasons that we don't know?
This election, outside groups spent the most attacking Duval, a total of $6.4 million since the primary. In second place, almost $3 million was spent attacking Democratic candidate for Attorney General Felicia Rodolini. That's not to mention the millions spent in the tight congressional races, and many of those candidates lost on Tuesday. So what do you think? Did attack ads affect your vote? Did they make you not want to vote at all? Let us know. Find me on Facebook or Twitter at Lauren Gilger.